What's good, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with some more fantasy football content. Really excited about this one. We're talking wide receiver values, and I'll just break that down real quick. What I mean by wide receiver value is someone basically being drafted very close to their floor, barring injury. Obviously, injury can derail any player, but very close to where their floor is for a season long perspective. And taking them at their current ADP gives you extreme value based off that upside where they could go. So I'm going to be breaking down several wide receivers that I think are excellent draft day values right now. These are guys that if you're getting them, you're going to see that positive return. And that way, if your other picks hit, you grab a couple of smart values, all of a sudden, you could be looking at a championship run. And that's what it's all about in fantasy football. If you want to compete for a championship this year in 2024, hit that subscribe button. I have a ton of content season long that's going to help you win that fantasy football championship. Running back values is already out on the channel. Bunch of strategy videos already out. Fantasy football profiles, more of all of that stuff coming your guys' way. We're going to be doing quarterback values as well here very soon. That'll be dropping in the next day or two. And then we have league winners coming up, sleepers, busts, everything you need to win your fantasy championship rankings, all that stuff. So hit that subscribe button. Also, please hit the like button, and if you have any questions or comments, drop them in the comment section down below. I respond to all comments, and it really helps out the videos, so I appreciate you guys. But let's talk fantasy football. So my first value, and these are half PPR. First value is none other than Jalen Waddle. He's going currently at the 311, the wide receiver 17. I just want to break down why I think he is such an incredible value right now. So the thing that I look at with Jalen Waddle is last year obviously was not a good year for him, but if we look to the previous year, he finished as a wide receiver 7 overall. As you can see, 1,356 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, and this last year, I excuse a lot of the reduction in production. It's a funny phrase, but due to injuries and just being banged up, he had 3 games missed, but he was injured and missing a lot of snaps in a lot of the other games, so he really wasn't, the same player that he was from an efficiency standpoint and from a utilization standpoint. And I just think once he gets healthy again, he's going to be perfectly fine. If we look at where he finished in his rookie year, he's a wide receiver 16 as a rookie. And you have to consider what a rookie season was before, they were leading the NFL in passing yards. This pie is massive in Miami due to that offense and just how potent they are. Tua is a solid quarterback. You may not think he's elite, but he is definitely good enough to get it done for fantasy football. As I said, led the league in passing yards last year. He's at 1,000 yards every year in his career. I think the touchdowns bounce back. I think he's an explosive, skilled, and talented football player who is just a value of going to wide receiver 17. I love drafting him there. I really just have no qualms with it. If he's there, basically, I am taking him. Reason being, like I said, I think it's such a safe pick, and the upside is so high. It's kind of a no-brainer to me, and you can get him, end of the third, beginning of the fourth round. I've seen him go in the fourth round of drafts repeatedly. I think he'll probably end up being, end of the third round pick, but I am, like I said, perfectly comfortable doing that. You start RB, you take Jalen Waddle, you might have a wide receiver 1 on your hands. So that's something to consider when you draft him. And like I said, he's just got done in a multitude of ways as well. 104 receptions his rookie year. Not quite the yards per reception, but the next year, 75 receptions, 18.1 yards per receptions, absolutely absurd. I think that number goes up this next year. I think he'll be above 16, which is a really good number. 18 is ridiculous. But he's a young wide receiver. He could do something like that again. I'm just not going to project him for that. But I think he's going to get a good amount of targets in this offense, and I think he's going to go for 1,300 something like yards this year again. All right, moving on to our wide receiver value number 2. It is Amari Cooper, currently going at wide receiver 42, the 505. A few things I wanted to talk about Cooper. Last year, he was a wide receiver 18, and he was 10th in the NFL in receiving yards. He had 1,250 receiving yards this last year. That's an absurd number, something to point out. 128 targets is also a great number. And 15 games played. If he played a few more games, he's probably finishing very close to a wide receiver 1 last season. That's how good he was. He also had a touchdown stolen from him last year. That was an absolute bomb. He still got a bunch of yards on it, but it was clearly in bounds. NFL refs took that away from him. You give him that. You give him 2 games. Um, Obviously, I was a Amari Cooper owner last year. You can tell I'm still salty about that play, but let's keep it moving as far as his 2024 outlook. I think a lot of people are just really down on his future outlook with Deshaun Watson. But I want to point out that even when Deshaun Watson was injured and compromised and just, I think, the worst version of himself last year, Amari Cooper still averaged 96 yards a game with Deshaun Watson. Let me just say that again, 96 yards a game with Deshaun Watson, and he was 10th in the yardage already. There's very little target competition around him. Like, they are one of the teams rumored to be in the Brandon Ayuk sweepstakes, so that's something to consider. Jerry Jeudy, who's currently the number 2 on this team, does not scare me away at all from Amari Cooper. He's an excellent wide receiver. He proved that last year. If he stays healthy this year, Deshaun Watson's, just a decent player. He could easily be having 1,400 yards, finishing as a wide receiver 6 or 7. I think that's the type of upside he has. Not necessarily what I would project, but I think he's going over 1,200 yards again this year. I think he's going to have more touchdowns than he had this last season. I think people are going to regret not drafting him and to be able to get him a wide receiver 5. Again, imagine you go RBRB, you take Jalen Waddle in round 3, you take Amari Cooper in round 5. Like, you have a good wide receiver core, you have 2 stud running backs, and you've got another pick to play with. I just think that where he's going currently is just too low, and I think it's because people are down on Deshaun Watson, but I think the numbers bear a difference. Okay, moving on to our third wide receiver value. It's Tee Higgins for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, a few things I just wanted to point out about his stats down here. He's had some good seasons already in the NFL, and Joe Burrow is an excellent quarterback. He's a clear number 2 there. I just want to look at some of his past numbers. So in 2022, he finished as the wide receiver 17, averaging 12.4 points per game, and he missed time. So wide receiver 17 and missed games. Also, he's being drafted currently as a wide receiver 26 in the 507. 2021, the year before that, he was a wide receiver 22, averaged 13 points per game. That was even better on a per game basis and missed time as well. So he has missed some games in the past, but even when missing time, he's finished higher than where he's currently being taken. And if he is to stay healthy and he is in a contract year, I think he has every motivation to be out there on the field every week that he can be. I think he is due for a big year with Joe Burrow. And when you consider the most touchdowns he's had in his career is 7, and he's had that types of points per game, it really makes me hopeful for him because, like I said, he is the clear number 2. There's no Tyler Boyd. He's in a contract year. He's a young, explosive football player. He has Joe Burrow, who could potentially throw 40 touchdowns, and he's the clear number 2 on this offense. Even if, let's say Ja'Marr Chase has 15 touchdowns. If Joe Burrow goes out there, throws 35, 40 touchdowns, which he's done, he's thrown 34 and 35 touchdowns in seasons before, he has anywhere close to that type of production, the number 2 in this offense could easily be catching 10, 12 touchdowns. Like, that's well within the realm of possibility, and that's baked into Tee Higgins' price. I just think people got distracted from the franchise tag perspective, but for this season and redraft, you want Tee Higgins on your fantasy football team. He is going to be utilized by the Cincinnati Bengals. They're paying top dollar for him this year. They're going to use him. They're going to try to get, into the playoffs, contend for a Super Bowl again. And he is a big part of that. And although I think Burton is a talented young wide receiver, I think he'll be the number 2 after this year, a good dynasty buy to me. I have no real reason to believe he'll be a massive threat to Tee Higgins' production this year, just with how much this offense throws. Joe Mixon leaving town, they could throw even more. I just think where he's currently being drafted again is lower than his floor, and I think his ceiling is higher than people think just because of the touchdown upside. I mean, he's a 6'4" wide receiver as well, and massive threat in the red zone. And like I said, Joe Burrow's going to throw 30-plus touchdowns as long as he's healthy. Last year, Tee Higgins missed a lot of games to injury. Joe Burrow was banged up at the beginning of the year, was not himself. I think that explains a lot of the reason why the production was poor last year, and I really do not expect that to continue. I expect him to be very good for fantasy football this year, and he's another guy that's an excellent wide receiver value. Okay, next up on the list, we got to scroll a little bit here, unfortunately. It's Tank Dell, currently going as a wide receiver 29, 604. Let's just point out a few things about Dell, though. This last year as a rookie, so he ended up breaking his leg, but he's fully healthy now, was just balling in that preseason game yesterday while I was writing up these notes, actually. But wide receiver 29 currently being drafted, but last year finished as a wide receiver 16 in points per game as a rookie. But let's put that into perspective. He had more points per game than Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper, and if he takes a second-year leap, he is very close to Ja'Marr Chase at 13.3 points per game, A.J. Brown 13.9 points per game, and Tank Dell last year was at 13 points a game. Usually wide receivers take a massive leap in year 2, and the type of numbers and success that he was having, although it didn't come over a 17-game season, was pretty extraordinary, and I think people are discounting how successful he was. He's being drafted currently as a third wide receiver in this, and I think he could very well be the number 1. At worst, I think he's the number 2. I do not think Stephon Diggs is going to be the number 2 in this offense over Tank Dell. And like I said, you're getting basically a discount on a wide receiver that could take a leap into from an area where he was already a value from where he's being taken currently. Like, I just don't think Tank Dell's ceiling was what he was last year. And let me just point out his rookie 17-game pace. He was on pace for 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns as a rookie. Pretty crazy. And when him and Nico were on the field at the same time, he had a higher target share than Nico, more points per game than Nico, more air yards than Nico. He could very well be the number 1 wide receiver in this offense that's going to have a lot of success for fantasy football. And his draft price is just simply crazy to me right now. This guy's an absolute draft value. Draft a bunch of Tank Dell. He's a really talented wide receiver. That's the thing I think you have to bet on in the NFL is talent. Stephon Diggs is getting older. He's the third wide receiver in this offense. I really believe he's going ahead of Tank Dell. I just think that's wrong. I think Tank Dell has just as good a chance of being the number 1 wide receiver on this offense as Nico Collins, who I think is another extremely talented player, but is being drafted a lot higher. I think they're kind of going to be a 1A, 1B type of situation, but take that draft day discount on Tank Dell, throw him on your roster. I just think there's a ton of value where Tank Dell is currently going. I think you're definitely getting him as floor. You draft this guy wide receiver 29 or in the 6th or 5th round. This is a guy I'm willing to reach on a bit. Just get Tank Dell on your roster. You're going to enjoy the ride. Like I said, he's a stud. Another thing I want to point out, C.J. Stroud, when he was drafted number 2 overall by the Texans, he had one request. That request was draft Tank Dell. They have a relationship. I think it's going to be very fruitful for fantasy football moving forward, and it's one that I'm willing to bet on, especially at this ADP. Alrighty, if you guys have made it to this point in the video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, drop them in the comment section down below. I'll respond as always. Like I said, quarterback values coming out tomorrow, so stick around for that one. Hit that subscribe button. I have a ton of more videos coming your way. Going to be bringing back some of those early round decision series as well. I know some people like that, so stick around. Hit that subscribe button. We'll see you guys next time.